FCC Chairman Ajit Pai has repeatedly insisted that his political opponents, people in favor of net neutrality, have resorted to being hyperbolic when it comes to the discussion surrounding net neutrality. In fact, this is what he had to say about our legitimate concerns about his repeal plan.
Those on the other side have literally nothing other to peddle than hysteria and misinformation and fear about the light touch approach that we had for most of the internet's existence. So I would hope that people would focus on the facts, but again, given what's transpired over the last several weeks, I'm not surprised at all. So much of this hysteria is simply misplaced. As we will see going forward, getting this regulatory system right means better, faster, cheaper internet access for all Americans across the country.
So that's what he thinks about you. That's what he thinks about our desire to protect net neutrality. And believe it or not, he's already smugly declaring that his repeal plan is proving him right, because the very next day after they voted to repeal net neutrality, large internet service providers didn't already start throttling content.
Those who have said that the internet as we know it is about to end have been proven wrong starting this morning as people send emails, check on their Twitter accounts, post on Facebook and the like. We have a free and open internet going forward, and the FCC and the FTC going forward are going to make sure that happens.
So I don't think I've ever seen anyone be so smug and so wrong at the same time. So he says, those who've said that the internet as we know it is about to end have already been proven wrong starting this morning. So the logic here is that since they just voted to repeal net neutrality and Verizon and Comcast haven't already rolled out tiered internet plans the very next day, it must mean that all of the commotion over net neutrality was misplaced, thus proving Ajit Pai right. However, there's a couple of problems with this assertion. Not only is it idiotic, but it's also wrong. Because as Ajit Pai knows, being the head of the FCC, once you vote on regulatory changes, they don't take effect immediately. In fact, his colleague, Minion Clyburn, explained that these changes take a couple of months to go into effect.
In a couple of months, when all of these rules go into effect, because it's going to take a few months for all of them to go into effect.
So maybe it's the case that Ajit Pai was just unaware of the fact that once you vote on new regulatory changes, they take a couple of months to go into effect. But if that's the case, if he literally didn't know about this when he's the chair of the FCC, then he should be fired because he doesn't know how his own agency operates. But I'm willing to bet that Ajit Pai knows these rules don't literally take effect the very next day, and that, as usual, he's lying to us again. Now, even when these rules do take effect, some companies like Comcast still won't be able to start throttling immediately. In fact, Comcast is actually prohibited from throttling until September of 2018 because of previous agreements that they've signed. And if you seriously think that these companies are dumb enough to roll out sweeping changes immediately when the public is still engaged and paying attention to the issue of net neutrality, then Ajit Pai is even more naive than I previously thought. But this is the head of the FCC, a major governmental agency. So if he says something that ignorant, he's not misinformed, he's just lying to you. But for those of us who are still concerned about net neutrality and freedom on the internet, well, he's telling us that we really shouldn't be worried about freedom on the internet because there's still going to be one agency that will be policing the internet, the FTC.
As I said, the FCC and the Federal Trade Commission are going to continue to be cops on the beat. So if there's any company, any internet service provider that acts in any competitive way, we will take action accordingly.
Now, he's being incredibly dishonest here because what he's not telling you is that the FTC is only able to take action in the event an internet service provider is not transparent about their anti-competitive, anti-consumer conduct. So in the event Comcast, for example, throttles a particular company, well, there's nothing the FTC does so long as Comcast is upfront about what they're doing. Now, Minion Clyburn, who is an FCC commissioner and colleague of Ajit Pai's, explains it way better than I can.
And the FTC can only help you after a harm is done. So if you can prove that it's unfair or deceptive, then the FTC can protect you. But it's not deceptive if I've disclosed. And who knows what the definition of fair will be going forward. Now, all you have to do is put it in a small print in paragraph 25, and you will be able to do what you want. You will be able to control my experiences you meaning the internet service provider, and I have to hope for the best. And there's no agency that will stop it.
So clearly, he's not being honest about the tremendous amount of power he just gave to ISPs, which is why nobody believes him. And if you watch this full interview, you'll see that Steve Doocy, a Fox News host, is even presumably skeptical about what Ajit Pai is doing, and it seems like he smells bullshit too.
Here's what I want to know. Is my internet going to slow down? What I'm paying right now, I'm okay with it, a little high, but is it going to slow down? Will I be able to pay for more? What's the deal for me, the average consumer?
Well, Steve, the answer is yes. And if you really want to learn about what's to come with no net neutrality, you should probably stop listening to people that you work with, because Fox News is notorious for their lies when it comes to this issue of net neutrality. Now, I've already provided you guys with countless examples on this channel about how Ajit Pai is lying through his teeth about everything. However, this next clip that I'm going to show you might be the best example that demonstrates just how disingenuous and deceitful Ajit Pai really is. So take a look and I'll explain to you why what he's saying, even though it seems benign, is actually a huge lie.
Ajit, if we had stayed with net neutrality and there had been, say, a President Hillary Clinton, I mean, where could this have gone? What type of regulation could we see?
They would have banned, for example, free data offerings by wireless companies, where the wireless company will say you can stream data, music, video, and the like, exempt from any data limits. They would have banned that. They probably would have gotten into price regulation, which is essentially the government deciding how these businesses are going to operate.
Now, what he's saying here at face value, it seems reasonable, right? I mean, of course, we want internet service providers and carriers to be able to offer unlimited data plans to their customers. Who wouldn't be in favor of that? But what he's not telling you is that these so-called unlimited data plans aren't what they seem, because Verizon, for example, sells different tiers of unlimited data packages to customers where it actually throttles video content unless you pay more. Now, second of all, when companies like Verizon offer to exempt certain apps from data caps, they're advantaging their own products over other services. So in telling customers that their streaming service doesn't count towards their data cap, yet anytime a customer watches Netflix, that still does count towards their data cap, that's their way of trying to kill off their competitors under the guise of unlimited data. And that's bullshit. It's not really unlimited. Now, that's what the FCC was trying to stop. But Ajit Pai is saying that it's a bad thing, that they shouldn't stop Verizon from resorting to these types of disingenuous marketing tactics. Now, also, he states here about the government being able to dictate pricing, and that's what the future FCC would have done under Democratic leadership. However, he's implying that it's a bad thing that the government is able to stop these companies from ripping you off by imposing tiers, by offering internet to you like television packages. That's somehow a bad thing according to Ajit Pai. Now, he's not saying this explicitly, but that's exactly what he means. But to say that Ajit Pai is lying is becoming so obvious that it's a term that's as evident as water is wet, for example. Anytime his mouth is open, he's usually lying, because that's all he can do. Because since the overwhelming majority of the American people, including his own party, are against what he's doing, he has to lie in order to cultivate support for his plan. He has to pretend to be in favor of a free and open internet when we know that he's not in favor of a free and open internet. And he paints people who are in favor of a free and open internet as the enemies to a free and open internet. It's incredibly frustrating to me.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.